What if I told you that a black kid from a working class neighborhood in Houston, Texas, has become a major player in Africa's oil and gas industry? Yachtze Luchin came from humble beginnings. Determined to create a different future for himself, he became an engineer and went on to work for some of the biggest Western multinationals in the oil and gas industry. But it wasn't until a series of work assignments took him to countries like Nigeria and Equatorial Guinea that he discovered a major gap in the market.
I saw a window of opportunity in the smaller resource space. The bigger companies are only interested in developing hydrocarbons when the opportunity is of a certain size. So I saw a niche that could be pursued, which was the smaller fields, what we call marginal. That's below the radar of the big guys. And that creates an opportunity for the smaller companies such as myself to come in and execute.
Instead of waiting for someone else to seize the opportunity, Yachtze decided to build something of his own. He founded Unite Oil and Gas International. His vision? Create a black-owned energy company that could compete on the global stage while helping unlock Africa's vast energy potential. Today, Unite Oil and Gas is one of the few black-owned companies of its kind. So, how does a black American navigate doing business in a part of the world where he feels deeply connected to but has never lived in? And why does he believe Africa's energy sector represents one of the greatest untapped opportunities for diaspora inventors? Find out in this episode of Black and Borderless. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Black and Borderless. We have a really exciting guest on today, Mr. Yachtze Luchin of Unite Oil and Gas. Yachtze, I'm so excited to have you on.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
And we're actually in a really cool place today. So we're at Kafeta Coffee House here in Houston, having some Ethiopian tea and a nice little refresher. And we just had like the best carrot vegan cake known to man.
I could certainly attest to that.
It was so good. So this is a really beautiful coffee house owned by a mother and daughter. And they serve really good Ethiopian coffee and tea. So make sure you check it out. So Yachtze, tell me, what is Unite Oil and Gas for our listeners out there who've never heard of it or who are not really familiar with the energy sector?
Sure. Thank you so much. Unite Oil and Gas is a very unique international oil and gas company. The reason why I say it's unique is because what we've done is we've merged the traditional oil and gas space, which is development and production, but we also have consulting and services.
So how successful has it been?
So it's been very successful in many ways. So let me explain. We launched in 2024. We signed a contract with SNPC, which is the National Oil Company of Congo. And before I elaborate, I want to say something on camera here. The name of our company, obviously, is Unite Oil and Gas. There's a myriad of companies in the market, especially in oil and gas, but that name serves a greater purpose. And there's rationale behind why I selected the name Unite. Let me speak on that and then answer your question,
Please,
if you don't mind.
Sure.
So, as an African born in America, labeled sometime as Black, we are taught that our heritage, our roots, if you're not an astute historian, in America, it began with slavery. We didn't say began, but it's what's highlighted, and then the Black experience begins to take off. And so as a youth, I always had this propensity, this desire, this craving, this thirst to reunite and reconnect with my true roots. And I always tell my kids this. I say, look, if you want to know where you're from, you must find a place where the people look like you in vast numbers. And as I searched the globe, prior to DNA studies and all of these things that we do that are a bit sophisticated in the modern era, I found a place called Africa where it looked like I could find some of my cousins. I say that jokingly, but bottom line is that the name Unite signifies so much for me. Number one, it was for me as an African born in America to unite with the continent. After spending 27 years in the industry here in America, I wanted to unite because I felt the opportunity space was much broader for me, quite honestly. And second, with all of the knowledge that I had gained, I felt that it was a mandate. It was something that I was responsible to do, to take the talent that I had been able to secure in America and to go back home, as I like to say, to Africa and help those who may not be as fortunate or may need national oil companies and or ministries that need help in developing their resources. And so that was the purpose of the Unite brand initially. And then as I began to build out the team, I realized, I was like, wow, this company is so diverse. We have people from all over the world working on one common goal, and that is to maximize our presence in the market, the Unite Oil and Gas brand. And so it took on another meaning that, yes, diversity, even in 2026, is still highly significant and important because we're bringing people as far as Venezuela, Africa, Canada, America on one platform, female, male, working together for a common cause, and that's building this company. And that's what has been such a great joy of mine, quite honestly, is to see how it has been interwoven and the tapestry of the company is so beautiful. And then everyone buying into the vision of what we ultimately want to accomplish. It's been a beautiful experience for it.
So that's a really great point you touch on. So you do have a very diverse scene, as you said, from different countries, Venezuela. Is your team predominantly Black? So are we talking Black folks from all parts of the world? Is it a mix? What does it look like?
Yes. So the team, simply put, is maybe 35% Black, but Black as in African and traditional Black American. So diaspora, African derivative, if you will. And that's not necessarily by design, but I'll say this to you. Unite, and as the CEO of the company, as the founder, my drive is for us to be the vehicle and the bridge for national oil companies and ministries throughout Africa and other countries as well to partner with us to bolster their technical acumen. And whatever it takes for us to achieve that fundamental sort of goal, and this is of the consulting and services space, we will do it and we will bring in the necessary talent. So of course, race is not something that we focus on. We focus on the capability of the individuals. And as with any business, our ability to deliver excellence is highly and significantly predicated upon our ability to attract the best talent.
Yeah. No, that's definitely a fair point. So I want to take it back, Yachtze, to your life before United, right?
Sure.
Because I'm always interested in how you were living, what experiences. You talk about your childhood and that sort of thing, something that kind of inspired or sparked your interest in Africa. Let's talk about your other job before you became a Unite guy. So you worked for some pretty big, energy companies. So you worked before starting that.
Sure.
But you were already going to Africa for those companies,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
Okay, so tell me about, the companies that you worked for, and did that experience also influence your decision to start Unite, or had you already kind of made up your mind that was where you were going to starting your own thing in Africa?
Sure. So I hear two questions. Let me try to address them. Please don't allow me to forget either one of the questions. But let me start with. So I've been privileged to work for Hess. I started my career with Texaco, which ultimately became Chevron, and that was my first time working for Chevron. And then I left Chevron. I worked for a company called Noble Energy. I worked for a company called Valco. And I worked for a smaller component gas company called Osika, which was focused only in America. But to your point, throughout working for these international oil companies, I worked Africa several times, Nigeria, Equatorial Guinea, and that was a pleasurable experience. It was a job. I was learning, but my passion to want to explore and establish Unite was really predicated on a desire and a dream that was built many, many years even before I started working for these different companies and traveling and going to Africa. So ultimately, for instance, when I left and started Unite, I was working for Chevron. And Chevron, I worked for them twice. And Chevron is a world-class organization. I always say I have the degree, jokingly, from the University of Big Company, and Chevron is one of the biggies. So what I learned at Chevron is capital stewardship,
Mhm.
prudent and decisive decision making, risk mitigation, how to unlock and seek out value in areas where others are unwilling to go. All of these principles were core in my learning. And the bridge to why I wanted to do Unite was I saw a window of opportunity in the smaller resource space. For instance, the bigger companies are only interested in developing hydrocarbons when the opportunity is of a certain size. However, when you visit with ministers and when you talk to presidents, national oil company presidents, etc., their agenda, they will tell you, it may not be the same language, but they will tell you, look, our agenda is one that says no molecule of hydrocarbon shall be left behind. We want to produce, we want to monetize everything that's underneath the ground so that we can have value and ultimately revenue circulate in those economies. So I saw a niche that could be pursued, which was the smaller fields, what we call marginal, that's below the radar of the big guys, and to some extent have been overlooked or left behind or already produced to a level that they're no longer interested. And that creates an opportunity for the smaller companies such as myself to come in, develop those resources, partner with host governments, and execute. And so that's how I was one of the core tenets, if you will, of our strategy was going in, accessing these marginal fields, and providing the technical know-how to bring it to market.
It's brilliant, but what was your feeling when you kind of discovered that, hey, there's this kind of opportunity in the market that these bigger energy companies are now addressing? Do you remember the day that you thought, okay, I'm going to go out on my own and explore this, unexplored, no pun, part of the market? How did you feel at that time? What was kind of the sentiment that you had? Were you scared? Were you confident that you were going to go in and kill it? What was how did you feel?
Great question. Let me say this. I don't want to paint a picture that says I had a definitive 5-step strategy when I began to envision being a CEO of an oil and gas company. What I had is passion. And my definition of passion here is the unrelenting pursuit of what's possible. The unrelenting pursuit of what's possible. So it is that desire, it is that passion to be a CEO of an oil and gas company that drove me. And quite honestly, the strategy that we have today is something that evolved. For 20 years, I tried to raise capital to buy equity and assets in Africa. I was unsuccessful from a lens of establishing the development and production business. But what that time allowed me to do is to meet people, establish a broad management team to enhance capacity. And so before Unite was ever introduced to the market, I was building a magnificent team. So as this team was being built, what the first opportunity 2024 allowed us to do is to establish brand recognition. And because of those 20 years of working and building relationships and trying, I was able to execute singers when the opportunity came. So to this day, we don't have production, but we have brand recognition. And so as long as we continue delivering our service, as long as we continue providing that technical excellence, implementing those commercial strategies, doing those risk assessments for financial institutions, we're touching all of the areas that we need to ultimately employ and deploy the development and production division, because these are the stakeholders. And so the consulting and the services is allowing us to establish this brand called Unite so that people will understand who we are, so that when we catapult and take that last step and find ourselves able to secure equity in the development and production space where we need that $50 million infusion, where we need that $75 million infusion, it will no longer be a case of what have you done in the market. We will be able to pinpoint an array of clients throughout Africa and South America, because we're looking at opportunities in Guyana as well right now, as well as Venezuela. So we will be able to have a global portfolio of capacity and capability where we execute it that will ultimately give the credence and credibility for the funds to flow in for the development and production. So that's the holistic strategy. And we revise as we go. So that unsuccessful 20-year pursuit was me basically saying, okay, fine, I can't raise the capital, but what do I do now? I provide consulting because we have the expertise. And then we build off of that. So I had to taper the strategy. Instead of going straight to development and production, we provide the consulting, we provide the services, and then eventually we get to the development and production. So you're looking at a strategy that's been revised, but you're also looking at a strategy that's in motion.
Okay. Awesome. So for those of our listeners out there who are not familiar with kind of what you mean by production and development, you're talking about the actual production development of the hydrocarbon rolling source, right?
Sure. Yes.
Yes. So what you're essentially talking about is that you basically started this consulting arm of your business, and you're going to use that now to build a network of clients and really build your credentials to now go into production of hydrocarbons and development.
Yes. Let me say something to your point of the audience that will see this interview. People who will see this film trying to start a business and trying to advance themselves in any capacity, in any way, whether it's school, business, the like. What I like in my journey to is someone who was extremely passionate about achieving this development and production goal and was unsuccessful. But I decided to start walking in a direction that will ultimately afford me what I'm ultimately trying to attain and will give me experience and the credibility, because the development and production is a very capital intensive side of the business. Notice I said earlier, 75 to 100 million to 50 million. It's substantial to get into that space. And one of the key elements of being able to get into it is you have to convince those with the capital that you're capable of delivering and managing that invested money in a way that will yield return. So start walking, figure out a touch point as to how you can use a path to get to your ultimate goal. Right? You may not be able to start exactly where you want, but it don't mean you can't get started.
No, that's brilliant. I think people need to really understand that. You may have a business goal in mind, but because of lack of capital and other things, especially Black entrepreneurs, I think trying to do business on the continent, right?
Yes.
Is that, yes, it's Africa, but it's still a capital intensive market. Africa is still a capital intensive market.
Absolutely.
People don't realize that, especially when it comes to the energy field.
Absolutely.
So you found a way to enter that market through the consulting route.
Yes.
And then you're going to build that network and then now use that to raise capital for the production and the development. So there's always a way to kind of pivot to get around something to get to your goal. And I think that's kind of the lesson that I'm picking up from that.
Absolutely.
So let's fast forward. So now you started Unite. You were working for these kind of big energy companies. You decide to start Unite because you see this kind of opportunity in the market, for kind of smaller, I don't know how you guys would call it, but like projects. Why did you choose the Republic of Congo as one of your starting points?
Sure. Great question. Once again, quite honestly, I didn't necessarily choose the Republic of Congo. In a cliche manner, I would say the Republic of Congo chose us. But in truth, in summary, what happened was their president essentially said to the national oil company, look, we want to be in a position to develop some of our resources ourselves, because the typical business model of the African countries that produce oil and gas is that they get IOCs, international oil companies. So we hear that term IOCs, it's just international oil companies. So IOCs come in, they invest capital, they develop the resources, and they establish a split between what the companies get to keep and what the government gets to keep. So what the president and the national oil company president of Congo said was, look, we still have that business model. It's going to continue, no problem. But we have some other resources and assets, if you will, that we want to develop ourselves. And we realized that we need a bit of technical support, a partner, if you will. And we were fortunate to be chosen to go into Congo and lead the development and a lot of the technical assessment, evaluation work, if you will, to develop those 3 fields. And so that was the nature of that relationship in the Republic of Congo. SNPC is the acronym of the national oil company in Congo. And so that's how we got started.
Awesome. So I asked you more kind of like a social question.
Sure.
As a Black engineer,
Yes.
going into that market,
Sure.
how was the reception initially, even before you even started Unite, when you were working for Chevron, all these big companies going to the African market? Were Africans there? Were they surprised to see you, or did it seem normal for them to see a Black American coming into that market as an engineer?
I would say the feeling and the response was mixed. Sometimes they were surprised because the industry, certainly American oil companies, is dominated by Anglo-Saxon males, so a bit of Asian at times. So to see me in an engineering capacity at that level and at that stage, traveling and being part of a core team from all coming from America, it was to some extent a bit surprising for them in some cases. And then in other cases, it was just immediate embrace, right? Like, oh wow, and they would want to know, my story and how I got started, because they would even pinpoint to me that it was unusual to see a Black American working at that level in these oil and gas companies. Because of course, I was part of the negotiation team, strategy team, and of course traveling abroad, etc. So it was unusual. And so they were curious and would ask questions. So it was both. It was a bit of excitement at times, and it was a curiosity that I had to kind of give them a little bit of elaboration on how I got there and who I was. So I told my story a few times, but it was a lovely experience though, because I enjoyed connecting on a social level and learning more from them about the social aspects of the country, because it was different countries that I was able to be exposed to working for these countries.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful experience.
Wow. No, that's pretty awesome. So as an American, because you're Black, but you're also an American, you're a U.S. passport, right?
Sure.
What has your experience been navigating governments in the region? Has it been easier or more challenging than you would expect, or than you'd expected?
So having and carrying that blue passport, that American passport, as you said, there's an expectation that expand and ultimately exceed the color of your skin. And I try to operate in a way that represent excellence. And so for those who seek or choose to look at the color of my skin, for whatever reason, they will see excellence. And if it's an African person who wondered if someone of African American descent or Black from America could deliver on the same level that our white, our Asian counterparts, I just try to be a beacon of light and an example that sometimes we need to be able to show that we're just as capable, if not better. And so I personally don't really focus on race as much. I focus on delivering excellence. And if it's someone who need to see that race can, what the Black race can do, then they will get that experience by watching me. But I don't focus on it at all. I focus on delivering excellence. And I really, really strongly feel that everything else will take care of itself.
So that being said, did you feel like it was easy, not so easy, or challenging to navigate now that you are, out on your own, with United Oil and Gas?
It's interesting. I don't really feel that it's difficult for sure, but I certainly don't feel that it is easy. And the reason why I'm teetering between the two is because I've interfaced with a variety of people. So it's not one size fits all. I think sometimes, to be quite honest, they wonder if this black guy who was in the CEO position is leading a team that's highly capable to deliver the level of excellence that they're used to, if not accustomed to, from other companies. And once again, in that light and in that situation, I point to our sort of executive bio that illustrate all of the things that we've done globally, because as I said, our core team is a byproduct of the university of big companies. So we've all worked for Shell, Exxon, Total, all of the big guys. When you look at the multidisciplinary team that is housed within Unite, we have experience from all over the world. We've worked, in 70 plus basins globally. So that's not countries, but 70 basins on six continents. So we have global experience. The only thing unique about us is that shirt, this pigment that I wear is unique from what people are used to seeing, but the capability is the capability is the capability, and we're excellent at what we do. So it's not easy, it's not hard. Like I said, it's not something. Well, your question is, how do I find it? I haven't found it difficult. I just think I've focused on the product, delivering, establishing trust, and making sure we operate in integrity, and demonstrating and ultimately illustrating the passion that we have. And the one way I think after you get to know me and ultimately unite, all companies have, the bigger companies call it social responsibility. And that is to invest some sort to make the place better wherever you're doing business. Responsibility says it's almost a task. So we call it social solutions, because going back to being an African born in America that's have this platform now, I want to be a part of the solutions that are needed in Africa. So immediately when we show up, of course, we have a core assignment. There's deliverables that we must be able to put on the table for our client. That's the reason why we're there. But I immediately started looking into the school system. I immediately started looking into orphanages. Like by the third week we were in Congo, we were already scheduling visits to start participating and donating and investing energy, effort, and time into the orphanage space. We adopted 2 orphanages that we were working with in Congo, as an example. So because I come from the inner city, and because I know what being impoverished is like, because I know what the challenges that we face globally as people of color, I naturally am drawn to that side of my country experience as I look to maximize production, as I look to seek out profit for Unite. But those things are not my only driver. We have profit. It's an agenda. We have petroleum. Yes, we're chasing it. But the people, although I'm saying it last, it is definitely running close proximity to the first thing that we're thinking about. I am thinking about when I go to these host countries, because I'm an African who was born in America.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really good point. So this idea of like you feel an extra sense of responsibility
Absolutely.
towards these host countries in Central Africa or other African countries as
Absolutely.
companies entering.
Absolutely.
It's almost like it's personal for you.
Absolutely.
So I want to talk about kind of some cultural things that resonated with you when you first started going to Africa that made you feel, oh yeah, these are my people. They're facing the same struggles I face. It needs to be better. I want to help do something here because I'm amongst my people. What was it? Can you think back on the first experience that made you feel like, oh yeah, we're related?
Yeah. Let me tell you why I laugh, because I will answer your question holistically. But I can assure and tell you the first thing that made me feel at home is when I went to the restaurants and I tried some of that hot sauce. In most of the African countries, that literally just blew my mouth up. I was like, whoa, the American hot sauce has nothing like, and I can't think of the name, but it's the red. It looks like picante sauce, but it's, I can't think
Like it's like a habanero.
yeah, it's like yeah, oh, it's super hot. So,
Yeah.
but the food, very similar to what we call soul food or black food in America. And so, of course, soul food is the derivative of African food. So, that's one way immediately I felt connected. But then when I started riding around, sure, when I show up, the hotel typically I was staying in or that I will stay in would be downtown. And so I was experiencing the particular city from a sheltered uh, westernized expat experience. But it's when I began to go to the villages and leave the central areas and go into the market that I began to get accustomed and exposed to real Africa. And when I would see how the people are living, but still jovial, still happy, I said, oh, reminds me of how we as a people can struggle. We can have challenges, but we still have joy. It resonated. The connection was immediate. But beyond that, when I see myself in these countries as a participant to unlock resource, I realize that when you think about real estate, when you think about tech, when you think about a myriad of industries that are happening, booming and growing, even on the continent, Africa, they all need energy. And so I'm here, when I say here, I'm there in Africa to do my part, to serve the community, to serve the continent, to unlock commodities, gas and oil that can close the gap on those who don't have electricity, that can fuel and be a baseline for the industrialization of these countries.
Yeah.
It all starts with energy. So I feel so connected. I feel so charged, and I feel that I'm doing something that's going to have a lasting impact, not just immediate gain or profit, but a lasting impact that will ultimately change lives.
Yeah. No, you touched on something very important there. That is a question that I had, which is that for the diasporans who are not in the energy sector, why should they care about some engineer that's talking about oil and gas? Oil and gas is not the most interesting, sexy subject in the
We're going
world.
to try to make it sexy, but we struggle.
It's not. You're right. Exactly. It's not the sexy subject. So why is energy critical to Africa's development at this point, in your opinion?
Thank you. Very, very important question. And hopefully I can match with an important answer. Here's the deal. The boom that people talk about, we read about in Africa, it's real. The undercurrent, the platform for that boom to continue at an exponential rate is predicated on the availability of energy. So even though the sector is not sexy, we must understand that all of what we see will have to be fueled by energy availability. And so to the diaspora who is interested in this industry, one could ask the question, how could I get involved? What could I do? They are at a place of uncertainty and just don't know how to engage. As I said earlier, to just go straight to the upstream side of things is highly capital intensive. But I would say education is the first step to participation. And after you're educated in a particular area, logistics, supply chain, sure, you could even go technical route, start at being a tech. Regardless of where you want to start, education will be key. And then after the education, you could look to participate in the industry by being employed by an international oil and gas company, or perhaps going back to whatever respective country that's a hydrocarbon developer and producer, and look to engage in that way. But you have to be informed first. It is a highly technical industry, and education is key in my. But that education doesn't necessarily have to be in the geoscience or engineering space. There's other areas, but you have to be educated first.
So that's great. I think that, people out there who are considering, how to get into the space, that's definitely like great advice for them. So you talk about how like energy is kind of at the crux of other booming sectors in Africa right now.
Absolutely.
Tech, what you named it.
Yes.
Right? What are the consequences of Africa, or in this case, Central Africa, not getting its energy infrastructure Right.
So not getting it right, I want to deal with two elements of not getting it right. From a holistic sense, not getting it right deals with availability of sufficient energy to fuel the development and the boom. Lack of energy, slower pace of boom. So that's one component. The other component is what we were talking about and touched on with the other question, is participation by the diasporan. If you're Central Africa, participation by the local people. You see, energy, fossil fuels is so important because of everything it fuels. But we must make sure that we have a seat at the table in our own countries. Because if not, value will be created and extracted, but it won't find itself at the proportion that it should be absorbed in Africa. So it is critical, it is key that the resource matches the talent that's available in these countries to participate, to redirect, and ensure that that energy is being consumed because, of course, a lot of it will be exported. But we need to make sure that a sufficient amount also is being consumed on the continent to fuel the growth that's needed.
Yeah, yeah. I think people forget about that part, right?
Absolutely. And that's why we have to be ready to participate. Yeah.
Yeah, because we often think about oil as an export product, right?
Yes.
Something that we that Africa's
Yes.
going to sell to the world.
Yes.
Nigeria,
Yes.
as you know, is a huge exporter of oil.
Yes. Yes.
But it's interesting because we rarely talk about it as how oil, its usage within Africa, and how it's fueling the development, no
Absolutely.
pun, of
Yes.
the continent itself.
Yes.
So I think that's a really interesting.
Very, energy is transformative.
Yeah.
And we need to be a part of that transformation now.
Yeah. That's pretty good. So speaking about imports and exports, so we know what the importance is of energy, oil and other and the likes for the continent. As you know, the world is kind of upside down right now, right? The U.S. is facing a potential conflict in Iran and other parts of Asia that may actually affect oil, production or our sources, our access to oil in those places. Do you see that as being a win for like a place like Central Africa? Like now becoming a main source of oil for these big developed countries, given the current conflict in Iran and otherwise? Do you see it impacting Central Africa's oil market for the better, given that obviously Western nations like the US and the other big superpowers will have limited access to oil
Yes.
in OPEC or where the ocean giants is? Do you feel like that will they will turn to Africa as a source of energy? And do you see that be beneficial to?
Essentially, oil is a global commodity. And we see the imbalance or the harmony in the market when prices fluctuate all over the place, which in this case, with the Iran situation, it is based on supply. The comfort that the supply will be sustained in a reliable fashion. And when we have spikes that are imposed by wars, it creates a situation where producing nations can participate and provide more oil. So by default, subject to OPEC quota, because OPEC basically governs how much each country can produce. But subject to OPEC quota, yes, Central Africa could potentially profit more when there's conflict, such as the one we have now, where there's oil essentially being stopped from being able to be produced. Of course, Central Africa could make up some of that deficit, that gap, potentially subject to OPEC quota.
And as Unite Oil and Gas, are there any opportunities that you see there that you could tap into? I know it sounds bad because we're talking about obviously a conflict, right?
Yeah.
And, sometimes I know we say companies want to benefit from these conflicts of any sort, but, the reality is that it's already happening with or without our control. And how is Unite stepping in to actually, fill the gaps?
Sure. So our role is indirect, but certainly impact or we impact certain things. And let me explain. The reason why I say it is indirect is because we don't have producing assets at this time that we can turn the valve and offset some of that supply need, right? However, the nations, the national oil companies, the countries that we serve will now have initiatives to expedite development, will have initiatives to redevelop, to find sources of crude to close the global gap. And when that happens, they will need what? The technical acumen. They will need the support of someone such as Unite. So indirectly, we will be there to support those drivers to offset the deficits that we experience due to wartime situations such as the one we're experiencing right now.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's certainly fair. And like I said, again, no one is wishing for conflict, right?
No, of course.
As a business, you kind of have to project what that means for you,
Sure.
and what that means for your bottom line,
Absolutely.
what that means for the opportunity that exists.
Absolutely.
So, I want to talk more about kind of the philanthropic work that you're doing. You touched on that, about the orphanages that you guys are working with, kind of the social solutions, not social responsibility, but social solutions, as you call it.
Yes.
But the reality on the ground is not always that, right? Sometimes you go out there, with the intention of doing good. But then there's a time when you have to maybe make a decision between profit and what's socially best for that market. Have you ever been faced with that in Central Africa?
I would say we haven't been faced with that because when I look at profit, it's not only from, or let's say benefit, or having a positive impact. It's not just profit. It's sustainability. It's knowledge transfer. It's putting the client and ultimately the country in a better position strategically to develop resources and to hopefully learn from us via knowledge transfer so that for ages to come, well after we're gone, they can continue doing things in the most efficient manner possible. So that's always a goal, to do that as it relates to our business. And then, as I said earlier, it's ingrained in the company's DNA that wherever we go, we will leave it in a better place. And that's not just from a business and you maximize your production. And yes, because Unite came, we had some workflows and some processes that allowed you to make more money. That's beautiful. We will do that, right? That's our core business. But combined with the business, as I said earlier, we will always make the people, or seek to make the community and the people better as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's a really, yeah, as we know, energy companies don't always have the best reputation in Africa, right? When you think about Shell in Nigeria. So I find it refreshing to hear someone in the oil space or in the energy space speaking of corporate social responsibility, in that way. So now let's talk a little bit about the future and what that looks like for Zonaya and even for the region, right?
Yes.
So we're gonna play a little vein called Looking Ahead. We call it Borderless Banter, but I think I like Looking Ahead better as a name for it.
Okay.
So Unite is gonna be expanding to Equatorial Guinea, right? So right now
Who we're pursuing.
you're pursuing Equatorial Guinea.
Yes.
So you're
But Equatorial, a lot of countries.
so I have Angola, Benin.
Yeah, Benin, Angola,
Guyana.
Equatorial, Guyana,
Okay.
Venezuela.
What is your goal, Yachtze? In like 5 to 10 years, I'll have you fill in the blank of this sentence. In 5 to 10 years, Unite Oil and Gas will be the what of Africa?
In 5 to 10 years, Unite Oil and Gas will be a key bridge to unlocking resources that were left behind, overlooked, or uninterested by the majors, will be developed by Unite, playing a role in supporting the country to unlock those resources. Secondly, in 5 to 10 years, it will be very easy to see the level of contribution we have made to the technical or enhancing the technical capacity of the countries where we do business.
Yeah.
So that's going back to the knowledge transfer piece. So we want to educate and we want to participate.
Yeah. Love. That's I think like a really noble goal, I think, for a company. I keep saying energy companies because, like I said, I'm not used to hearing this kind of rhetoric from an energy company. So it's refreshing to not only see an energy company, but a Black-owned energy company talk this way about that market. In 10 years, Central Africa will be the what of the world?
Well, I would say in 10 years, a portion of the boom that's underway will have been realized. And to that end, Africa will continue to be a major energy source for the globe when we talk about oil production. But I would also see more finished products being produced on the continent. Finished products. You see, Africa historically has been a country or continent that has provided raw materials for businesses globally. But the true accretive value that can be added to a natural product is in finishing it. And so there's people are getting wiser and they're beginning to understand that you don't just want to produce milk. You want to make all of the bakery, the cake. You want to sell refined finished products. You want to participate in the total supply chain of what those products have to offer. So in 10 years, I think there will be a manifestation and a maturity of Africa participating in more of the finished product space, as well as continuing to be a leader in providing raw minerals and, of course, crude and natural gas. Because the continent is very rich, but they're wisening up on participation and how those products, those raw products, are being monetized.
Yep, absolutely. So before we go, again, our listeners, there are people of the diaspora like yourself, right? If someone is out there watching, what is the one thing that they can take away from this episode that you wish they would take away? If nothing else, if they didn't listen to anything else that you said today, what is the one thing that you want the diasporans out there or even people on the continent to take away from this discussion that we just had today?
Well, you said one, but I can't just give you one. I have to give you a piece. Give me a piece. I'll give you two. The first thing I would say is that, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. And being an entrepreneur is not easy. But nothing in life pertaining to being successful is easy. So where there's no sacrifice, there can be no success. If you believe you can achieve something, at that point it's real and it's up to you to begin to put the pieces together. Stay away from naysayers. Try to surround yourself with game changers and people who are visionary, and work your craft. Proper planning prevents failure. The second thing I would say to the diasporans out there is that the boom is real. The continent is waiting. Where there's talented people who are looking for change, who have something to offer, the time is now. Not next year, it's now. What's the first step? Education. Putting together your plan. And one of the things I'll say, people ask me, my friends from America, they said, how do you like it over there? What made you want to do it? They were leery. They were concerned. They had fear. Fear for me is an acronym. False evidence appearing real. I heard that from a minister one time. False evidence appearing real. The opportunity will not come in a package looking like a present. You have to seek out opportunity. You have to move with courage. And you have to be a student of your craft. And you have to build a strong team. So to the diaspora, I would say, get started. The boom is real. The time is now.
You know, I think we often talk about being an entrepreneur that's very glamorous, romantic way. You'd work for all these really, really big energy companies on the continent already. When you decided to go out on your own and establish Unite, what was like the prevailing sentiment? How did you feel when you decided you wanted to do that?
Yeah, great question. Let me say this. Sometimes I think analogies drive home a point very well, and I would like to use one in this particular instance. When you look at the dashboard of your vehicle, there's a gas gauge. And when your gas is getting low, it's empty. And when it's filled up, it's on F. And when it's in the middle, it's the half a tank. And similarly speaking, I like to use this from a gauge analogy. F will represent optimism. Empty will represent pessimism. And a half a tank is realism or reality. And as I was stepping out into this new journey, and I was leaving what everyone would deem a good job, because I had a good job in Chevron, I heard what the pessimists had to say. I heard what the optimists had to say. And I realized that the reality in this situation was that if I stayed, for me personally, it would be the wrong decision because of the conviction that I had was propelling me to pursue my dream. And so at that moment, stability and income of a certain caliber or capacity wasn't my personal driver. Although the people that was giving me feedback, this is what they were looking at. That, what? You've risen to this level in Chevron, one of the biggest oil companies in the world, as a Black guy, and you're choosing to walk away? Sure, because my conviction, even in my challenging moments going forward, was able to propel me from pessimistic views, push me through the realities that I was facing, and had me yearning and craving and hanging on to an optimistic mindset. So what I would say to the viewers is that there will always be pessimism. There will always be negative. There will always be a reason to quit. But fall in love with your dream. Be convicted by what you see and no one else can. And know that it is real, although it hasn't been manifested. Do the work. Plan. Pursue. Get educated. Build a team. But if you don't do anything else, stay optimistic. And I would always like to say this. I don't think I'm bigger. I'm a little bigger than a lot of people in stature, but I don't think I'm smarter or better than anyone, but I certainly don't believe that I'm less capable than anyone. So if others can do it, then the simple question as you look in the mirror should be, why can't I?
Why can't I?
And so that's what I would leave with the audience. Why can't I? So get serious.
Yeah. No, I think those are really powerful words to leave with. For anyone looking to venture out on their own on the continent, I think there's no better way to kind of end this episode but that. Thank you, Yachtze. This has been great. I really enjoyed this. We're gonna get some more of these little carrot shaped things. They're really good. And this is a really beautiful, brilliant coffee house. So we all need to very beautiful. Come back here. We're gonna be back. We're coming back for sure.
Okay. Thank you for having me.